Hello.
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 So we have Dom and Ed from ReSRC.it. It's probably best if you guys introduce yourself instead of me. So Dom, do you want to go first?
Hi everyone. I'm Dom. I'm one half of ReSRC.it. Guess the product guy on the product. Believe it or not. Background's kind of front-end developer type stuff, which is what I did predominantly on ReSRC.it.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Ed. I was, before ReSRC.it, I was a back-end dev, specializing in kind of secure document delivery and data migration before that, so I'm kind of software architect. And then me and Dom got together and started ReSRC.
So a bit more before we go into ReSRC.it and all about, obviously a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about is your acquisition to Fastly. But before we get onto that, do you want to talk a bit more about, fucking amazing, isn't it? So before we get onto that, we're going to talk about your careers before ReSRC.it. You just mentioned a little bit about what you did. We'll talk about it very briefly, and then go on to really talking about the business, what ReSRC.it is, what you guys did, how it all started, because really it all started, well, my knowledge of your company started when we had you speaking at Hay 2.5 years ago, probably, when you were, 4 months into your journey. So, like how long have you known each other, first of all? When did you start working together properly? How did that all come about?
Sure. So I met Ed, pissed. Basically, me and my wife Stella had come back from the pub one Sunday, and a new couple had moved in opposite where we were living. Thought it'd be nice to introduce ourselves, which we did. Asked if they needed any help. Luckily, they said no. But they did agree to let us take them for dinner down at the local pub a few weeks later. And I guess it was there, wasn't it? That
it kind of spiraled out of control after that, really. Realised we were in similar fields, both IT guys, that we'd seen each other anyway. We actually worked in the same building. And he recognised my car and things like that. And he was like, oh, you're that guy, you're that guy.
You're that guy.
Oh, you're the guy who works in the office, like with all the girls.
Good start.
Yeah. And then it went from there, really. And we started doing Thursday nights. So every Thursday night, we were both like working on our own things. But every now and again, I needed some help with some front-end stuff. This sounds pretty rude, actually. Dom needed some help with some back-end stuff.
Whatever you do in your evenings isn't really anyone else's business. It's fine.
Yeah, Thursday evening.
Yeah.
The night.
Nearly the weekend.
Yeah, and it always turned into this kind of alcohol-fueled geek session.
Yeah.
Geek session.
Smells like
geek session, that was.
like a German nightclub more than someone's house.
But no, it wasn't. It was then that we, after doing this for quite a while, we just thought it'd be better if we were doing something that would, we both benefited from, rather than it just being like, rather than it just being favours.
We've practiced this 3 times and it's never spiraled this direction. But yeah, I mean, you may as well continue.
Continue. So we just thought, let's build something. We're both contractors. So we had a bit of flexibility if it got out of hand and we got fired, not to worry. We'll just, go get another contract.
Yeah.
So we set off building something and more to kind of solve a problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, let's build a business and make loads of money. It was like, look, what can we do that we've got complementary skill sets for? What is a genuine problem at the minute?
Yeah.
What can we technically do? And, from a business point of view, what can we afford to do? What can we throw some money at? We can't, we're not going to go out and get funding for this startup. Let's, push it on our own type thing.
Okay, so kind of moving on forward a bit then. So ReSRC.it had started on this Thursday night bender, if you will. And then...
Did Ed say bender? Or was it me?
I added an element to the story. But we're going to roll with it, I'm sorry. But starting from there, obviously, the product was formed. You had an idea after this. You'd come up with a concept. So can you tell us a bit more about where it went from there, like how it's picked up momentum, how you guys kind of become to have this business that's actually worth something and people actually care about and are passionate about?
I think early on we didn't really know what it was. We sort of had an idea. It was fun.
Yeah.
we were getting pissed every Thursday night and
Yeah.
having a great laugh and actually building something. And you know, we knew the value in it, definitely, but we never appreciated what it could turn into, like a real business. So I think things sort of went on from there, and as we started taking it more and more seriously, as we saw the potential in it and what it could do and the problems it could solve. And it was cool. But Thursday night, suddenly after a while, we stopped drinking. And it was more about productivity than having fun.
And roadmap and what can we do, what feasibly can we do tonight,
and most weeknights, and not just Thursday nights. It escalated into more of your personal time, and because you were both working full time at the time, so so this was something that you were like, outside of work, really.
And I think like whilst we were doing the whole beta, just in general, a lot of it was, is this actually a business? You know, is this responsive images on demand, whatever you want to call it? You know, is this a business that we can grow into something a lot bigger?
So I guess it's a good time to really tell the audience, for those that you don't know what ReSRC.it is, could you give a kind of elevator pitch of what ReSRC.it is?
Come on, product guy.
Good. So it is basically an online image delivery service. The images are delivered in real time, and there's quite a lot of crossover with the whole responsive image thing. So depending on how you serve your images, whether you're using like source set or picture or just baking your images into your HTML, we do a lot of the legwork that you would potentially pre-process in advance. So whether that's cropping or bits of effects or optimizing, crunching, lossless compression, all that type of stuff. The service was built to kind of get rid of a lot of that pain, you know, the pain point of doing that and that kind of image pipeline that a lot of sites have to go through.
I mean, obviously the landscape was quite different to, 3 years ago, maybe when you were starting to do this. You know, a lot of the standards now that are on the web weren't really established at the time.
Oh, so completely. Yeah. You know, there was no source set, there was no picture. There was like the responsive image working group talking about this.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was more arguing about it. You know, how are we going to do it? Chrome want to do this. You know, Opera had their own views. Yeah. Safari wouldn't even talk about it. You know, so me and Ed just thought, well, regardless of what browsers are doing, something still needs to generate these images.
While all the browser vendors are dicking around, we'll actually write something which works.
Yeah, so you wrote a drop-in solution where people could have responsive images on their homepage, whatever they needed, while these guys were still arguing about what to do.
Pretty much.
So you mentioned the workload was split between you two in terms of obviously your front end, your back end. When did you guys finally go full-time on the product? Obviously, we talked a lot of it was in your spare time. When did you become, fully supported by ReSRC.it?
I think it depends on the definition of full-time.
Yeah.
Full-time as in 9 to 5, or like working a full-time job in it. I mean, it was weird. Like me and Dom always worked quite hard to manage the risk, given that like we had rent to pay and things like that. We didn't have houses to secure big business loans on and things like that. It was a completely bootstrapped startup. So it was a weird thing, and like it was basically just lots and lots of hard work, and we kind of merged onto it over the time. There was always one of us on it full time during the day, things like that.
Yeah.
I'd a reasonable amount of flexibility in my other jobs. I was self-employed and took kind of contracts which worked full time, things like that. So yeah, I had some flexibility. Dom took big chunks of work off, and it kind of coincided with like big bits of dev work we were doing, like web rebuilds and all that sort of stuff. But it came on definitely over time, and sort of towards the end of the first year, we were putting in a bit of effort.
Yeah, I think as well, like especially 2013, 2014, the majority of our customers were from the US. Yeah. So during the day it was quite quiet, and then so you could do a full day's work, and then you'd come home, and then US is waking up, the West Coast's online, and then the support emails would come in or would get some sign up. So we did manage to manage it in that respect. Yeah.
It worked quite well. I mean, all the conference calls and stuff we were having with like companies in like New York and SF and things like that, they were all at like 10, 11 at night.
Yeah.
And it was always quite a shock to them because they didn't know where we were. They thought we were in SF or something. They said, oh, it's a bit late. And but they'd, we'd have a video call. It'd be pitch black behind them. They'd be like, where are you again?
Yeah, you kind of rustled there, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So did you not really sleep much at this point?
A few hours a night,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. This was before the babies as well. So.
Yeah. So entirely coincidental. We both had sons at a similar time last year. So yeah, that changed the late nights and things a little bit.
Yeah, I bet. So good parts about building the product, bad parts about building the product. Like what was bad about, I mean, obviously the downsides are you don't see family as much and you're always knackered. And obviously good parts when you start to see people who you like actually respect using your product and stuff. Do you want to talk a bit more about both
I think
sides?
that side of it's very addictive. Excuse me. When you start getting a few big sign-ups and big names coming on board, there is that real buzz of, wow, they're using our service. And there's that constant kind of another big name signed up, another big name's trialing it, and then it turns into a customer. And there's this constant like evolving of like bigger and bigger customers coming. But at the same time, you're putting so much pressure on yourself.
Well, it becomes more a hobby thing when you've got someone like Lonely Planet coming on board. That's not a thing that you can just kind of go to bed at night going, it'll be all right until the morning. You've got a commitment to that to make that work for them 24/7.
Yeah. And sorry, Ed, that's when it's not a software thing. That's all of a sudden, well, it's still a software thing, but it's like you're not just a little specific piece of software. You're a whole hosting infrastructure.
Yeah.
With failover and load balancing and GeoDNS and all these, fancy things you need. That's when all of a sudden it becomes very real.
Yeah, and you're responsible for the beautiful imagery on their homepage, and if that goes down, they're going to look shit, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where the kind of the company changed a little bit for me, and the not how fun it was, because I was still getting lots of rewards from like these household brands and stuff using this, which was awesome. But ultimately, you're responsible for that, and you need to run a business like a grown-up. And knowing that there's always smarter, more committed hackers out there. And like managing, when I was like up at 3 a.m. because like servers were being attacked, or things were happening. We were getting blips in traffic and things were falling over. Pingdoms going off. My phone's waking me up in the middle of the night. It kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And the stress of that, like you only really appreciate like after a while how much it takes it out of you.
Yeah.
To be on call all of the time. And that was a big thing. That was a big sort of changing point. Like I said, it didn't take away from the cool bit, but it's been hard work.
Did you feel close to burning out at any point? Did you burn out? Did you like? Because obviously a main problem with a lot of people who run startups around this kind of model where it starts off in your spare time, then it becomes your full time, then it becomes your life. People usually burn out and they just have to step away from the product. Did that never happen to you, or?
I think it helped because there were 2 of us.
Yeah.
And I think, well, certainly speaking for myself, I had phases of, oh my God, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
We've got this. We've now got a competitor, and like, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
They've got £5 million worth of funding and stuff in San Francisco, and these guys are really good.
You're 2 lads in Yorkshire.
And we're like two lads in Yorkshire.
That side of it is, I think, incredibly difficult. I mean, I look back on it now, like the levels we pushed ourselves to was like ridiculous, stupid, like regularly doing 3:30 in the morning, back up at 7 or 8, and just doing it day in, day out, and then, fueling yourself on coffee and almost like buzzing off each other that the fact that like features are getting released and things are progressing and a new customer's come on board, and you just looking back on it now, it's bonkers knowing what we put ourselves through.
I think we were both lucky not to have burnt out, because I don't think we actually did burn out. But I think like I went through a phase, and I talked to Dom about it. I talked to my wife about it. And then like you bounce back a couple of weeks later, and like you're on it again. You're all over it. You're remotivated. I think it would be sort of difficult if you were doing it on your own. Because you potentially not have anyone who knows the ins and outs of the business who can reassure you on that actually it's not that bad. You're stressing out over nothing. Things like that. And
a lot of these things are nothing, but when you've had no sleep and you're worried about servers and potential customers that might come on board. It only takes that little thing, and you feel like you just want to jump off a bridge.
I think the thing is when you're so involved in it as well, and that is your life. Everything seems massive, really, because you're so close to it and you're passionate about it, and you've got an emotional attachment to that product. It's more than just providing a service; it's your life. And obviously, when it's supporting you guys, full time almost, then that's really important. Bring the mood up a little bit, obviously. So, the acquisition happened. You guys have been acquired by Fastly. You've sold your company into the Fastly family. Do you want to tell us a bit more about how that came about? Obviously, it's an incredible achievement, and I'm so proud of that coming from Leeds. So God knows how you guys feel. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So to go back a little bit, so 2014 was a period of good growth. We were still incredibly young. We were getting customers signing up. We didn't really know where they were coming from, apart from the fact that we were doing quite a lot of viral stuff on Twitter and things were getting retweeted. We had a few people writing bits of blog posts about us, but there was no marketing spend, no sales, no SEO, PPC or anything like that.
Yeah.
But big customers were signing up, and it was enough for the two of us to manage. So we just kind of rolled with it month after month after month. This came on. One of the things we allowed our bigger customers to do was to put their own CDN over the top. A lot of these big companies have got long contracts in place, multiple years with specific CDN vendors. So for us to go in and say, you have to use ours, was just a bit of a no-go. So we always kind of played that it's easy to put our thing in, slip it in between your CDN, job done. And we did this throughout the year. But the problem was, every time we did it, they took all the revenue.
The CDNs had the money from what you're making.
Completely. Yeah. So we had, me and Ed were going down to London, here, there, and everywhere, doing the nice sales pitch, and then the CDNs were taking quite a majority of the money.
Yeah.
I think we were doing all the hard work, and it was they were just cashing it and getting all the bandwidth.
Yeah.
And it was well, we charge on bandwidth, and suddenly, now we don't make anything.
Yeah.
And it was, I think the model in general was broken. And that's not something we thought about when we started, but these big companies were never going to buy in. I don't think they were ever going to buy into a CDN run by two guys. We needed to be realistic about that.
Yeah.
Even though we did turn into a content delivery network by definition.
Yeah.
We just don't. We're not big enough.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think when people find out it's two guys, it doesn't matter how good your product is. Putting all of your faith in that is very difficult to do. So we kind of needed to give them that flexibility, but to our own detriment, really.
Yeah. Okay. So moving forward.
So so that was basically 2014, and then towards the start of 2015, we knew this had to change. Whether it was partner. Well, we wanted some type of partnership with a CDN. We knew very well who we wanted technically, because they were far superior to everything else. So got in touch with Fastly. Initially to look at a private CDN.
Yeah, you wanted a white label service, didn't you, initially?
Yeah, kind of like private POPs in various locations we thought would be perfect, until we found out the cost, which was far above our budget.
Yeah.
But they were, in the meantime, Fastly didn't offer this as a service. They partnered with various people. They did quite a bit of work with ImageX. We had a few customers as well. But they were very adamant and very open about the fact that they were looking at this space and it was something they'd like to get into.
Yeah.
How would we feel about a partnership? Which sounded brilliant. Neither party kind of knew how that was going to work.
Yeah.
But we left it as you go away and have a think, we'll go away and have a think, and let's meet back up in a week online and just talk through some ideas.
Yeah.
I think it was quite weird at that point, because it was oh my God, Fastly have just asked us to partner them. So it was when it was poker faces on the phone, they sort of said, so we're thinking you're going to partner. How does that make you feel? Yeah, all right.
Inside you
but actually grins across our faces in real life. And it was kind of excitement from there on. It was wow, this could be really cool. And this could be great for the company.
Yeah.
And then a couple of calls later, it was so how big are you? And then they realised how small we were.
Yeah.
And they were well, okay, well, we're just going to buy you instead. How do you feel about that?
A little bit politer than that, but
Yeah.
But you had a grin when
Pretty
the
much.
partnership was mentioned. So at this point, what happened on that call? Like, were you just looking at each other like, fucking hell?
it was afterwards. We were just a bit like, did they just ask to acquire us?
Prank call.
Okay, so that happened, obviously. Where did it go from there? From them going, yeah, we're thinking about buying you. What are the formalities from there on?
I think after those initial calls, it was like, well, let's talk about how it could actually work. How I think our priorities of being bought, like, it wasn't just for me and Dom. It was like we had a load of customers who we respected a lot, and because they helped build our business. They supported our business as we grew. A lot of them knew how small we were and all that sort of stuff, and we wanted to kind of do right by them.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that they were going to be well treated in any move, and this wasn't going to be like some pure acqui-hire. It was just they were going to get by our customers, and the responsibility which comes with servicing those customers.
As well, though, like at the same time, we'd grown it to the point where like we pushed it as far as the two of us could, and we knew that if we wanted to push this a lot further, we'd have to go out and get some investment. So it was perfect timing in terms of, do we go down the investment route, or do we go down being acquired?
Yeah, sure.
I think the weird thing about it was like there was the decision maker at that point was that there's a natural home for what we do.
Yeah.
And it's in a CDN.
Yeah.
So, okay, we get funding. What ultimately happens? We partner or sell out to a CDN.
Yeah.
But we're potentially a bigger company. And I think timescales almost dictated that we kind of do it sooner rather than later. Like we said, like the technology in the field had moved on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just good timing in every way, really.
Okay. So after you'd had these calls and then you chat to them about making sure that if they were going to buy you, that your customers were rehomed safely and they were serviced the same. And obviously, you when we were talking about this in the pub, the one thing that you always started with is to make sure that the customers were going to continue with that service. You don't want to fuck them over. You really care about the loyalty they've given you over the years. So once you knew all that was going to happen, once you knew that everything was going to be okay from there on, what happens next? So when you go, right, this is the right move for us, we're happy to be bought. Obviously, there's some specifics that need to be sorted out.
Sure.
What happens then when you go, yeah, we're on board?
So, just try to go back over there.
I think the point after that was heads of terms.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty formal document which comes to you, like sort of arrives on your doorstep, and it's like, this is what we've agreed.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to agree to it at that point. Like that's when the negotiations sort of
So that's the
start
starting point for negotiation.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember the heads of terms arrived on the 8th of May. I remember that. And that was almost like, wow, if right now we sign that without doing anything else, our company's been acquired, and then it's very real. It's like...
that must be mad.
I think what happened like at the same time. I mean, it was quite clever. It was almost like a tactic to like, here, have this.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, actually, we're kind of not happy with that.
Yeah.
And they got one of their guys on who was like this uber negotiator. We didn't actually know his background at the time, but he came on the phone and he was speaking a language I'd never heard. It was some. We were so far out of our depth at that point. It was not true.
All this legal speak that you just didn't have a clue.
Oh yeah, it was legal and financial spiel, and we had no idea what we're doing. So it's that point we got help.
I think no. I think he's playing it down a little bit. We did know what we were doing, but we were just so close to the product. We knew that we didn't want to screw this up. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we weren't getting screwed over and that we were maximising the most of what we could.
Well, you want someone that's experienced in the field of negotiation. You want someone that's emotionally unattached to the product. You want someone who can see, black and white in this sense. Whereas I imagine a lot of your emotions were tied to a lot of the terms of the contract and all that kind of stuff.
Of course, and still running the business. We still had. This was another layer of complication on top of everything we already had. So.
Yeah, like you weren't busy enough already. You got to then read through all this. Yeah, okay. So going on from there, obviously there's a lot of toing and froing negotiation-wise. This guy was really amazing, wasn't he? You were telling me he was just incredible. What happened after that?
So we're probably Q2 last year. Things are starting to get very real. they're flying us over to San Francisco at this point to deep dive into the product, basically. So to see that what they think they're potentially going to buy is what it is.
Yeah.
As well, they are interested in us too as people. You know, are we the right fit for the Fastly culture?
Yep.
You know, is this going to work going forwards? That was something they were really, really keen on, that they had to make sure that it wasn't just the software they were buying, that, you know, they were getting the right individuals as well.
So at this point, were you letting them look into the code? Were you kind of, because that at this point that's your IP completely. If they have that, you know, obviously they want you as an acquisition hire, like as a hire, but if you kind of open that black box at this point, you're very vulnerable, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you don't know who these people are. Or you don't know how ruthless these people are.
Yeah.
You know they're a great company on face value, things like that. But you've got 3 years of work, of hard work, late nights, almost ruined relationships, things like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm not just going to give that up so someone can steal it.
Yeah.
So I am like ridiculously paranoid. So, you know, we
Ridiculously paranoid.
yeah. Like, you know, things were encrypted because I thought, like, I was like, we're in a meeting room there, and I'm like, Dom, don't you dare plug that network cable in.
I'm not even kidding. I am not, honestly.
I'm like, put it through your phone, don't connect to their Wi-Fi.
So a really fun guy to be around at this point in time. Okay.
Yeah, so it was
Ed thought the hotel room was bugged.
It's completely reasonable. Better to be safe than sorry, eh?
I guess so, yeah, I guess. Okay, so I guess forward on a bit more towards the actual thing going through. So I think we've talked enough about the process. But so you know, when you finally agreed on the terms, you made sure that the customers were going to be sorted out. You obviously made sure that you were going to be a good part of the Fastly family. And how is that final kind of commitment? So how does it work? Is it literally just signing on one dotted line?
So there's a lot of I wish it was that easy. There's a lot of legal due diligence in between it all, and the level they go into is ridiculous. So on paper, we're a really simple company. There's 2 guys with no office, with laptops, with servers throughout the world, with some customers here, there. You know, like on paper, this should be really easy, but oh my goodness, the due diligence. Sorry, so the entire acquisition took 6 months, of which 3 months of it was legal due diligence.
Right.
And the level of detail they go into is frightening.
And it's not just protecting your ass, it's theirs. Like, he's protecting both of you, though. So it wasn't just them just trying to sort themselves out. It was a fair agreement, and everyone was on board with it. It was just a very in-depth process.
Yeah, I think it was laboursome and very probing. It was...
Back to those Thursday nights again now.
Yeah. Yeah, so by the end of it, you know, even though we had given them no source code, they pretty much knew everything about our business. They knew about the cool stuff we'd done.
So they knew how you architected your back-end product and everything.
To make things fast, because it was in a very kind of Silicon Valley type meeting room, giving everything away. I got a bit carried away.
Yeah, wanting to know the Wiseman score. And
it was a strange experience because like you feel so exposed. And you end up just kind of backed into this corner at the end of it. You've spent like 6 months. You haven't invested in your own product for 6 months because you've been too busy doing due diligence.
So you were, because that's going not stale, but it's not moving forward at the pace that it was before.
Exactly.
Completely.
It's certainly not moving forward at the same pace as our competitors were.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, we signed heads of terms pretty early, and you know we started going through the DD after that, and it was like, well, we can't go out for funding. We can't cultivate any other
because that's committed now. That's going ahead, or it's not.
Totally.
And you're blocked off from any of the engagements for how long after was it? Or was it for
it was until the end date of the contract, which was like 6 months. So
so you were.
It was like we couldn't go do funding. We had no contingency plan.
Yeah.
We'd pretty much given the blueprints to our software. Because it's a strange thing. Okay, you don't give them source code, so they can't just fire it up and be up and running in a week.
But I guess they get the answers to everything else, though, don't they? So they know, you know, if they're wondering, is this a market we should get into? Well, they know it is because they know every single one of your customers.
Yeah, they've got your client list, haven't they?
How often you bill them, what you bill them. So
it's pretty invasive, isn't it? Really, you must have felt pretty vulnerable at that time in terms of.
Yeah, it's
I think towards the end, I mean, it was a roller coaster of these guys are screwing us over
Yeah.
versus, oh, I think these guys are all right.
Yeah.
And
But it wasn't there was no. We felt like it was, there's the potential that you're going to be screwed over. But, looking back on it, it was just, we were just so protective over
Well, naturally,
what
I mean,
we'd...
they do this all the time, right? And you're kind of, two guys that have just grafted your arse off. So naturally, you're going to be dubious. Maybe not hotel room dubious, but but still dubious about the whole arrangement,
My biggest fear was there a camera in there.
All right, so how was the final closing of the deal? How does that work then? Was it, I think you said an email or something crazy like that, or?
It was, yeah. It kind of almost gets thrown into the hands of the solicitors.
Yeah.
Big documents going back and forth, and you needing to sign things and check things, and they need documents from you. And
At this point, you've no idea what you're signing.
Yeah.
But the guy tells you it's all right to sign it.
yeah,
So
that is pretty.
I bet that really helped your.
It's like a 70-page document every day. You lose the will to live after a few weeks.
I bet you didn't. Did you stop reading, or did you read them at all?
No, it got to the point where we just ended up having a day with the solicitors, thrashing it out.
Yeah.
Just to get it all done. And it's kind of like there's things you don't agree with, so you say, could we tweak this?
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, we'll try. We'll put it in the contract.
There's probably a point where you don't care anymore, though. Like you just want to close it.
It's a bit like buying a house.
Yeah.
So there's negotiations, but I think towards the end, like your resolve wanes a little bit.
You just want the house, right?
And you just want the house. You just want to move in. And it turned a bit like that, I think.
Okay, so it went through. Everything was clear.
So, yeah, that's pretty much how it is. It's not this eventful thing you'd expect. The solicitor rings you and says, yeah, it's done. And then I rang Ed and I said, oh, it's done. And then he said, oh, well, should we go to the pub? We said, oh, okay then.
Technically, we're employees now. So we needed to request holiday.
First day on the job, you go off and get shit-faced. Yeah. So was it like that? Did you crack the bottle of champers and streamers from everywhere?
No. I remember I once watched a talk, and a particular chap who was talking said, if you're ever in a position to be acquired, at that moment, go out and party, because from then until when it actually happens, it's a nightmare, and you don't sleep, and you worry that it's never going to happen. And I remember watching that talk and thinking, yeah, whatever. And that is the God's honest truth of how it was. I remember we didn't have a good night's sleep for about 3 months.
Yeah.
Of worry of, is it going to happen? Isn't it? If it doesn't, what we're going to do? We're 3 months, we're 6 months behind.
Yeah.
So there's not a massive. Well, it wasn't a massive celebration. There was just a massive sigh of relief that, wow, thank goodness it's done.
Yeah, thank God we can sleep now.
It kind of goes through, and you just think, oh, thank God. and just like you're out. We met in the pub for a drink, and then we were just both so tired. We went back. We'll meet later, because we had a bottle of champagne, and a bottle of rum, and a bottle of tequila. Big plans, and then we never rang each other back because we crashed on the sofa. So,
as rock and roll as you expected to be.
Yeah, no, not very.
Any brief, because we're running out of time a little bit, any brief kind of advice for people who want to go through the same process? I mean, obviously you guys complement each other well in terms of your skill sets and stuff, but any other advice that you'd recommend for people wanting to go down this route?
I think for me, just founder completely. Like, just pick your founder really well. I don't know, you don't necessarily have to pick the most technical, amazing person. I mean, it helps that Eddie's very good, so that's good, without giving him a big head.
Yeah.
But there is so much more involved than just like some person who's really, good at coding.
Yeah.
Like the trials and tribulations and the roller coaster you go on, you've got to go on it together.
Yeah.
And you've both got to be there to go, to go through it together. And I think that for me is really important. Like, before you pick whoever it is, make sure that you're friends, but you can also like shout at each other and like call each other names and like piss each other off and then hug at the end of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Ed?
Well said.
There you go. Okay, so just quickly the future. So obviously you're now employees of Fastly.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can't talk a lot about the future in terms of what you're working on because of the nature of the acquisition. But what are your day-to-day jobs in a kind of overview, if you will? Obviously, you're product manager still.
Yeah, product manager. So similar, although I don't have to do a lot of the stuff that was annoying before.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do much sales. I don't have to do the accounting, thank goodness. So glad to never have to use PayPal again. That's good. Yes, we should have used Stripe, but we did actually use PayPal.
Well, you know.
So yeah, similar. Obviously, it's on a different scale now with much bigger customers. But it's where it's at the minute. It's still that exciting point of where it was back when we first built it. So it's all exciting about, you know, the technology we're building and how we're doing things. It's a good part at the minute.
I think for me, what's like particularly awesome at the moment is like every like software engineer might write something and always have those little niggles like, I wish I'd just done that this way. I wish I'd done that way. Well, we've got the opportunity now. There's a team.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm part of the engineering team with like surrounded by world-class architects and things like that.
Yeah.
Writing a version 2 with resources which we can't ever have imagined, and like you can't help but think like this is going to be the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing to just think like all the lessons learned and all the some of the ideas which we wrote in our little company are making their way into like this thing which could potentially service Pinterest. Yeah,
this product that you respect so massively, and it's just crazy that your thing's getting integrated into that.
Yeah, and it's all just like this kind of, it's all a bit of a surreal experience of like, is this actually kind of happening? Because,
when we were talking in the pub as well, I remember you said that you were trying to do a new bit of code or something with Memcache or something.
Yeah.
And
so I was sat there, and it was quite early on, but I'm like, okay, I'm looking at this like bitmap thing, and I'm doing this, and I'm like, maybe we should use Memcache. He's like, oh, well, talk to that guy behind you. He wrote it. Yeah, okay, and then that's kind of where you need to be sort of struck with humbleness.
That's kind of next level, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit,
Awesome.
Yeah, so surreal, but amazing.
Do you guys have any more closing words, really, before we kind of leave you, I guess?
No, not really. It'd be nice to be sat on the other side and hear someone else from Leeds do a similar thing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I was really excited about. I mean, obviously doing the initial hay, like you guys were grafting so hard, and it was really awesome to see it evolving in the early days. But just having known what you guys have gone through and like seeing it coming from Leeds, it's immense. And you know, for a San Fran, company to buy you guys is incredible. So I guess I'd like to, on behalf of the audience as well, just say congratulations, really, and thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.